Okay. Hi, my name is Ainsley Ludema. I'm an architecture major. I'm a freshman, and I'm from Michigan. And this is Cora Conatser, and I'm interviewing her today for Honors 199. So you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I am Cora Conatser. I'm a sophomore at Ball State. I'm majoring in microbiology and pre-dental, and I am from Muncie, so I'm in my hometown.
Okay, well, we can get started. So how do you end up in this class?
So I actually didn't really know what the class was about to begin with. I actually took Honors 189 in the summer, and so my professor recommended the class, and it fit with my schedule, so I just went ahead and took it, not really knowing what it was about, but I really enjoyed it so far.
So you just didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So then we can just jump into background and reflection. What was your hometown like?
So I am from Muncie. I actually don't live in the town of Muncie. I live closer to Albany. I grew up in Albany, and now I live in the town of Albany. I just always say Muncie because it's the well-known town. So um, definitely predominantly white where I lived. I didn't have any kind of minority neighborhoods around me at all, or any neighbors at all. Probably within a 5-mile radius of me. So, and then I went to a county school, Delta High School. We were definitely predominantly white. So I also was not exposed to a lot of diversity within my high school. Not that I didn't learn about it, but yeah, so I definitely didn't grow up in a super diverse background. So coming into this class and coming into college was really kind of like, not culture shock, but it was different in learning and wanting to learn more about and educate myself on the topics.
Do you have any more thoughts on what you thought about race growing up, or is that a summary?
Okay, I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. What did you say?
Do you have any more thoughts on what you thought about race as you were growing up, like when you were younger?
Yeah, so I definitely grew up with parents that were very conservative. I kind of had my own thoughts all the way growing up. I would say I was way more middle ground compared to my parents, because I was learning some in high school that made me think a little bit differently, but I also still had some of the, common beliefs that my parents had as I grew up. So, but to be honest, I just wasn't exposed to a lot of the diversity that I should have been. So I was not very educated growing up as far as that went. So I was definitely lacking in that area. So it was hard, and I was definitely used to, just being like the American dream, like anyone can do it. Come on now, like it's not a big thing. So I definitely grew up in that environment, and I was used to it. So it wasn't really anything to me. But whenever I got to Ball State, I realized how uninformed that I was and how wrong that I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a change for me.
Yeah, I think that's really common. So when people around you talked about race, what were those conversations like?
Honestly, in school and stuff, we really didn't talk about race. I think just because it can be an uncomfortable topic, especially for such a conservative area, and definitely a red county. So it was, I would say, uncomfortable, but also just not really talked about. And then also we just kind of didn't talk about it in my house, I guess. So it wasn't a huge topic of conversation around me as I grew up.
Yeah. And then when did you start first thinking about race?
So I would say probably my freshman year of college was when I really started digging deeper into the complexities of race and the systematic racism in our country. That's really when I started understanding what people were talking about when they said like Black Lives Matter, and a lot of the social movements that were occurring at the time and are occurring now. Not that they didn't occur while I was in high school or middle school or when I was growing up, but I wasn't as aware, and I really didn't know what it meant. And I kind of just was like blowing it off like, okay, they're just being annoying. Honestly, that's kind of what I thought. And I was just enjoying my privilege of being white and not even paying attention to what others were feeling. So it was super selfish of me.
So do you have any stories about witnessing or experiencing racism that you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. So when we were talking about my high school, something really came up. I remember that was super prevalent. So I believe it was my sophomore year of high school. And every year in high school, we would have like a whole school kind of like field trip day. So like the juniors and seniors would go visit a college. So like Delta would take them on a bus. I remember we went to like IU East in Kokomo, Earlham. Senior year, we went to Ball State, Ivy Tech. So there were different field trips like that. But my sophomore year, we didn't go on a field trip. We stayed in the school and did rounds of like careers. Different employers came in and talked to us about what they did every day. And then we had like a motivational speaker at the end of the day. And no one knew who he was, but it was supposed to be like this new motivational speaker in town. So yeah, we were really excited about it. And it was towards the beginning of the year. So it was a good message to get us through and going in the semester and throughout the entire year. But in my class, I think I graduated with 265 students. And I would say probably maximum 10 were African American. That's like very max. So my sophomore year, we were all in the auditorium getting ready for this motivational speaker. And it started out really good. I don't really remember what his message was about, but it was good. And then all of a sudden it just turned tables and he started talking about race out of nowhere. And all of us were like, okay, this is weird, because it was completely off topic. And he had asked the whole auditorium of my sophomore class if there were any Black people in our class. And the auditorium was dimmed, especially in the back, like a normal auditorium would be if there were a speaker. And he asked all the Black people to stand up. And so one of my friends, Ben Bomadelli, he stood up and he was in the back. And the speaker was looking around like, where are the Black people? And that's what he said, like, where are you? And Ben raised his hand like super high. And he was laughing. Ben was laughing. And the speaker was like, oh, sorry, I couldn't see you back there, because it was dark and Ben was dark skinned. And we were all like, what? And like everyone laughed, because I don't think because it was funny, I think it was awkward. And that's why everyone laughed, honestly, because everyone loved Ben. And no one had any ill feelings towards Black people. I mean, I shouldn't say that, because I didn't know everyone's personal feelings, but you know, everyone knew Ben and everyone loved Ben. So it was kind of like, oh, that was weird. And then our principal came up and like escorted him off the stage like right away. And it was a big thing. And he was banned from our school property and stuff, which was good. And I'm glad that they took action and didn't let that speech keep going, especially because it kind of ruined the schedule for the day. But that was just that kind of struck me as, what in the world? This man is going around schools and talking about, I don't know if he just went on a crazy rant that day and started going off, or if that was his normal message and if he was getting away with that. But yeah, that was definitely a form of racism that was super prevalent in high school to me. So
Yeah, that'll definitely stick with you.
yeah, so weird.
So how do your other identities on social or social positions, so gender, class, region, religion, etc., shape your experience? And this can be on their own or in tandem with race. Do you have any thoughts there?
Okay, so personally, I'm white. I grew up middle class, probably middle to lower middle class. I was surrounded by white people my entire life. I went to a really good school that offered a lot of dual credit and got me ready for my college experience and prepped me a lot for getting scholarships and things like that aided me in going into my college education. So definitely those things, separated the races from me, because obviously I lived in the country. I never saw a Black person ever. it definitely, and I think it was especially prevalent when we were studying the segregated neighborhoods of Muncie, because it really made me realize, why have I never stuck back and like realized this in Muncie, because it is huge in Muncie. Like I am probably 15 minutes from Whiteley. And yeah, I've always known that Whiteley was a thing, and I've always known that Whiteley was a Black neighborhood. But why did I never be like, oh, but I have the privilege of living over here on a county road in a really nice area, but they don't, and those are where all the Black people live. So I don't know why I never thought of that. But yeah, I think that's a good example of why, or how my like class and race has separated me from the diversity of the different races.
That was a really good conversation that day. That one really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Especially because the white historians too. That part shocked me that they didn't even know.
Like the Ball brothers and stuff, which I did talk to my parents about that, especially my mom, because my parents went to Southside High School, which was the high school that Dr. Bartlett was talking about with the rebels.
Okay.
And I did talk to her about that though, and she is on the conservative side, but she's not like a blatant racist or anything. Like she would never, say anything racist, stuff like that. And so I talked to her about it, and she was like, I think that that's a really common misconception about Southside. But she said, honestly, like 50% of Southside when I went there was African American, and it was very, very, very diverse at Southside. So she said that it was not like white Southside and mixed Muncie Central. She said Southside was definitely mixed. And she grew up just a block away from the high school, and she had African American neighbors. And she said it was an awesome experience to her, because she, like in her high school, she gave the example that she had two African American police officers. No, maybe it was one African American police officer and like one white police officer. Could have been two each, I forget. But it was definitely like they had a good mix of everything, and like everyone got along there. And she said it was like a really good experience for her. So that was something that I kind of disagreed with in the class when we talked about it, because my mom had personal experience, and he definitely could be talking about a different era, which yeah, I totally understand that. But yeah, when my parents went, she said she had like a great education there, and that it was very culturally diverse. And she said that also the rebel flag was not their mascot. It was the cannon that was the mascot. It was not. They were the rebels, but it was not like the rebel flag. So I think that there's some misconception there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Trying to think if we've already answered this one or not, but it's a little bit of a long one, so
Okay.
we'll see if there's anything here. One of the themes of the class has been that race structures our global society. It's not just something over here or over there, or something that only affects otherized or racial groups of people. We're all living in a system, and we all have the capability to imagine and to help create something different, a more equal society. Where does your hometown fit in the system, and where do you fit in that system?
Okay, so I think this relates to what we've talked about before, but definitely race fits within the system of Muncie, because obviously the segregated neighborhoods, I mean, I knew that it was a thing. I just didn't even critically think about it and how systematic it was. Just the thought that like my mom recently just bought a new house, and so we were looking all around town, and we were not opposed to going into Muncie or Eaton or Albany, which are just outside the outskirts of Muncie. But it was very prevalent that in our price range, like we wouldn't have to go to a neighborhood like Whiteley or like anywhere on the south side of town. And that was just huge for me, because so many people don't have that opportunity to be able to choose, and they can only choose those neighborhoods and where they have access to like the MITS bus and other resources like the YMCA and downtown Muncie and things like that, and the schools. So definitely that played a part. And then the other one was my race, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that kind of plays a part too. Just realizing that a lot of people don't understand their privilege of being white and those um, those little privileges that people just don't even think about. I mean, even in the town that I live in now, since I am inner city Albany now, which is not a city, it's like the tiniest town ever, I have yet to see a Black person. And I've gone on like multiple walks, runs, been to the park probably over 10 times now in the past couple months that I've lived there, and I've never seen a Black person. So I, the, the racially segregated neighborhood is what was really speaking to me and what made sense to me when we were talking about it. So I definitely think that's how it's systematic in Muncie for sure.
So now we can move on to part 3, which is our world, our campus. So how have the events of 2020 with the pandemic, the uprisings, the election, or any other current events, because it's pretty crazy, how have these shaped your perception of racism and anti-racism in the US?
Yeah, so 2020 has been a big one for all of us, I think. It's been mentally exhausting, it's been socially exhausting, it's been everything exhausting. But I also think that because it's been so hard, it's brought a lot of issues to light, and a lot of people are more willing to talk about things. And I like that. And although it's causing tension, it has to come about at some point and it has to be solved at some point. And I think that we're reaching the climax of that. So I think that definitely on campus, I've seen a lot of it and I've learned a lot more about it. I would say the Honors College is pretty active in the fight against anti-racism. So definitely things like the talk that they had about systematic racism. I didn't get to go to it, but I had a few friends that did, and they said it was really good. So definitely have seen it there. Definitely like in our country, like a lot of the social movements that have been going on as far as Black Lives Matter and other social movements like that. And obviously our new president was a big change. Whether like you agree with that or not, I think that we can all admit that that was a big change and probably a big turning point in how social things are going to turn out. Um, so yeah, I've definitely seen that, and I would admit that I did not pay attention to any politics before. I don't like politics. I do not pay attention to politics. I don't like it. I do not like the negativity behind it. I would just rather turn off the TV and not look at it. And I deleted my Twitter because of it because I can't stand it. So it's too much drama for me. But I think that it's also, and something that I've learned through this class, something that it's important to listen to because it's actually the leader of our country and like the leaders of everything. Um, but yeah, I've learned to like pay more attention to that, focus on and educate yourself on who you're gonna vote for. Um, so yeah, I've definitely seen like changes in all of those aspects.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any thoughts on the pandemic specifically and how it shaped your perception of racism and anti-racism?
Um, I mean, what first comes to mind when I guess I haven't really thought about this too much, but in traditional society without pandemic, we have a lot of minority groups that are left out as far as like resources, healthcare, things like that, food, um, housing, things like that. So I'm sure that the pandemic has caused even more havoc for that because it's decreased the resources for a lot of people. So I can only imagine what it's done to them. So I haven't thought about that before. So that's something that I should definitely dig more into. Um, I think that the pandemic has also given a lot of people more leisure time to educate themselves and study, whereas I think a lot of times everything is happening so fast, everything is happening crazily in the world, and honestly, everyone just gets annoyed and it's like, okay, it's done and over with, let's move on. But I think it's been different because of the pandemic, because people have actually had time to sit down and reflect upon it and um, understand what's going on and why it's going on. So I think that that's made a big change in social changes as well.
Yeah, that's been really interesting. I've experienced that, especially like, I mean, I'm just turning 18, like getting involved in politics finally, and
Yeah.
Um, so I know you touched on wanting to go to that one talk online, and you had some friends who went to it, but have there been any other anti-racist actions or activities that you've been involved in personally?
I have not been in any. I haven't really gone to any of the meetings or anything. I know that they had the big march for the Black Lives Matter a couple months ago. I didn't go to that. I also think I had something going on, but I didn't go to that. And honestly, I didn't feel comfortable going. I just, I don't know, there was something in me, and I think that that's past experience in me as well that made me just not want to go, made me uncomfortable. Um, so I really haven't been, besides Honors 199, which I'm glad that I took the class, even though I didn't know what it was about. I'm glad that I took it and that I'm learning more about, educating myself on the topic and actually understanding why people want change instead of just blowing it off.
Um, so on that note, like, do you think if there were another like Black Lives Matter movement sort of thing that went on after taking this class, do you think you'd want to go or? Um,
I think that I would probably go. I'm going to be honest. I would probably feel really uncomfortable going by myself, though. So I would probably want to go with friends. I don't know why that is. I think that's just my past experience, but I don't know. I just feel that way. So
yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
Um, hmm. So here's a tough question. So how do you describe race relations and race issues at Ball State?
I think we've talked about this a few times in class, but when something happens, it seems like they call it, wait, is it the big five? Yeah, it's the big five, right?
I honestly don't know.
So like the biggest minority groups on campus, like they'll get mad and write a letter to whoever, usually President Mearns, and then President Mearns sends out an email, and then we're all like, okay, and then it just like yeah, it's a bad thing, but then it just moves on and it's kind of forgotten. Um, I definitely think that happened like last year when the professor called the police on the student, which there was more behind that, but um, I think that was like a big one because a lot of people got really upset because of that. And I remember that big protest that happened like in the Greens on campus. I was in class when that happened, but I walked by after class while it was happening. So yeah, I definitely experienced how upset that made people. But then again, it was kind of like, okay, it happened. We've protested, and now it's done. Let's move on. And then like nothing ever happened. So, and I think that that's just a revolving process and it's just a cycle that's continuous. And I think it's just the way to solving that is having classes like this and actually educating people because a lot of people just don't understand. And I don't know if they don't know how to communicate with like leaders or if leaders just don't know how to solve the problem. But I guess I don't have a good solution to that because it's hard. But yeah, I've definitely seen that on campus a lot.
If you don't mind, I mean, I'm a freshman and I don't really know much about that big protest that you're talking about. Do you just elaborate real quick?
Yeah. So I don't know all the details on it, so I don't want to, miscommunicate. But from what I heard on the news and things like that, was that basically there was a classroom. I believe it was a pretty small classroom, maybe like 10 to 15 students, and it was in the business college. And so they had assigned seats or seats where they all usually sat every day that they came to class. Um, and so one of the Black students in the class didn't sit in his normal seat. He sat like a couple rows back or something to charge his laptop because that's where the closest plug-in was. And so when the professor got to the class, I can't remember if it was like the beginning of class or if it was the middle, but the professor asked him to move to his normal seat, and basically he said like no because I'm charging my laptop, and then they just got in an argument and he called, from what I was told from a business college employee, he confronted someone else about it, like a higher up, and they told him to call the police. And then the police came and it was a huge thing and it was on recording, and basically they just didn't understand why he called the police because the black kid was in the wrong seat. So that was the biggest thing. I could have gotten some of those wrong. I kind of like dumbed that down a little bit just to make sure that I didn't say anything that was wrong. But yeah, that's what I remember hearing from it. And it was like a huge thing just because a black kid got the police called on him because he wasn't sitting in the correct seat. So, and so that was a big thing.
Yeah. How long did you see those protests going on outside then?
I think it just took place. It was one main day that they protested, but it was definitely like a couple weeks that I would say that it was like a pretty hot issue on campus. So, yeah. But I don't think that the professor got fired because he's tenured, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you for the little update.
You're welcome.
Okay. So do you think Ball State does a good job at creating a culture of belonging? And if so, why or why not?
I think so. I mean, I can't really put myself in a minority's position because I've never experienced that. But whenever I am scrolling through, like when I was a freshman and I was trying to get involved in clubs and things like that, when I was scrolling through Benny Link, there was a lot of like cultural diversity clubs that I saw. I also think that I've seen a lot of activities going on campus that promoted diversity, especially within the Honors College. I don't know if it's because I get a lot more emails from the Honors College than I do other places, but yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen like some of my professors will kind of like bring those clubs up and say like, yeah, you should get involved in this. One of them that I've seen because I'm a biology student, so I'm like basically nowhere else, and I live in Cooper, so I don't see a lot else on campus anymore. But I know that there was a group, the science department called LSAMP, and so it's basically a group of people that gets together and does they put together like research projects for like minorities, and I think especially Black students. And I actually work with one of them in our research lab, and so he gets paid to research, and so that's a really good opportunity as well. I think I can't remember their slogan, but it's like blacks in white coats or something like that. So yeah, I've seen a lot of it, but like I said, I don't think that the issues that come forth are handled very well. So that's definitely a problem.
Do you have any more thoughts on racism on our campus specifically before we move on?
I guess we could talk about the most recent event when there was some Trump protesters going around campus. I didn't see that. I don't live on campus, so I wasn't aware of the time. But I actually did drive by. I was on Bethel. I drove by like Worthen that night, and I saw a couple of police officers, and I was like, what's going on there? And but then the next day, I realized that it was like some Trump supporters dressed as KKK members, and so that was weird. I was like, what in the world? Why would they come to campus anyway? That doesn't really make sense. So, well, it makes sense because they're taunting and they're trying to get a reaction out of students, and they know that they're going to get a reaction out of Ball State students. Maybe that's a good thing. But so I think that they handled that well though, because like President Mearns was pretty serious about that, and also the Honors College dean, Dr. Emer, was pretty serious as well, and comforting students and making sure that they were in a safe place, and putting more like security around campus so that didn't happen. But then again, it's like, okay, where are they at now?
Yeah.
Where are the posers at now?
Yeah, I actually saw them. I was walking back from the Multicultural Center because I volunteer there, and I just saw this like big parade of pickup trucks and people yelling out their windows, and there were even a couple like military vehicles and just like flags, and I don't know, it was so much, and they were just like yelling at everybody walking on the sidewalk, and I was actually scared.
Yeah, that is scary because that's like extremist.
Yeah. mean, it's dark out and you don't know what's going on, and there's like they just keep coming, and they even like circled around again, but they definitely handled it a little bit at least because I
Yeah.
never saw them again. But like you said, you don't know where they are now.
So did they drive down the main drag of campus?
Yeah, they drove right down McKinley.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't know that. 'Cause I
yeah.
thought they were like maybe circling campus, but I didn't realize they went down. I didn't know that. So that's good to know. I'm sorry that happened to you.
I mean, it was just I don't know, like it's like I've never seen anything like that before. It was it was crazy.
Yeah, I bet it was super intimidating.
Yeah, I definitely recognized my privilege there, and I mean, even I felt like a little scared, and I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a really good point because I'm such a paranoid person and I get scared when I'm like walking in my car at night. So I would have definitely been scared. It wouldn't have mattered if it were like 10 cars lined up with no flags or anything on it. And if they were yelling at me, I'll be screaming and running. So I'm like super paranoid. But that was a really good point that you made about like the privilege that you had, even though you were still scared. Like you couldn't imagine like, being a minority and having those threats directed right towards you.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so I guess if we move on, can move on to this class specifically. Um, so you didn't know what you were getting yourself into at the beginning of the year, but since then, what has this course meant for you personally?
Yeah, so I've actually gotten a lot out of this class. I'm going to be super vulnerable right now, and this sounds horrible, but I'm going to say it because it's honesty. So when I looked on the textbooks that we had to get for the class at the beginning of the year, I still don't even know what the title of the class is called. I'm gonna be honest. I just was like, all right, honors 199, we're taking it, we're getting over with. And but then I saw that we had to read the How to Be an Anti-Racist book and the um, White Privilege book. And I was like, oh, and I was like, man, my first thought was, here we go, I'm gonna get it shoved down my throat again. And I have definitely had that feeling like multiple times on campus. But like, I look back on that and I'm like, that was really stupid. And because when I did read like all of the readings that we had to do, and like I actually did enjoy it, especially the one that we're reading right now, the How to Be an Anti-Racist, because I was just like, to begin with, I was like, I'm not a racist. I don't want to read this book that tells me that I'm a racist. I don't want to, I really didn't want anything to do with it, but I read it anyways. And I actually really liked it. I liked Kendi's personal stories because I felt like I was able to put myself into his shoes so much more and understand what was going on. Um, I just, I got a lot out of that book. I did get a lot from the White Privilege book, but I thought that one was a lot more like definition based. So it was good to like learn a lot of the terms and then apply that to the How to Be an Anti-Racist book. So I think just that in itself has been like a big turning point for me because like whenever I'm reading my book on the couch, because I still live with my mom, she's like, oh, really? And I'm like, honestly, it's not that bad. Like I like it and I'm actually learning and I'm not getting it shoved down my throat. I'm just educating myself. So I've learned a lot about that and I hate even telling that story because it's super racist.
Uh,
And I understand that.
yeah, but with that Kendi book, I thought it was really interesting how he recognizes his own racism, and I really respect, like, he's a black man, and I mean, I don't know, like um
Thing, yeah.
like awful to say, but it just made me feel so much more comfortable about really confronting my own and just being honest about
Yeah.
that
I
conversation.
totally agree with that because I think it's like from what I felt in the past, I was like, okay, all white people are racist. Like, we get it. And, like, fine. Like, but then it's like, whenever I'm reading that, I'm like, okay, like, I understand this so much better, and I understand how complex this is. This is so not black and white. This is, yeah, black people can be racist too, white people can be racist, mixed people can be racist, like everyone is racist. So yeah, I definitely agree with that point that you made.
Yeah, that was a good read. So another big question. What have you learned this semester?
Yeah, people are broad.
But just like a couple specific things, I guess, in particular that you'll take with you.
Yeah. So definitely the racial segregation of the neighborhoods. I talked about in one of my reflections that I'm just naturally interested in real estate. I have no idea why. Um, I'm the biggest nerd. Like I will get on like Zillow like every night and like see what new houses are up for sale. I don't know why I do that.
That's awesome.
But whenever I'm reflecting on that, I'm like, I've never once looked at a house in Whiteley and thought, man, that is a awesome kitchen. Like never once. Never even have I looked at a house in Whiteley or any other South Side neighborhood. So like, I mean, that just like really blew my mind, the racial segregation of the neighborhoods thing, and the maps that we studied as far as the United States' racial segregation and like the crimes within that area. And that's another huge thing that I learned about, was that we think that like those black neighborhoods are just filled with crime and like drugs and robberies and all kinds of stuff. You wouldn't want to walk through that neighborhood. But like I came to the realization and learned that like those areas are just more highly policed than our areas. And I think that the quote, I can't remember, I think we said it a few times in class, but it's like, well, then why isn't your white neighborhood being policed if police are actually doing the right thing? Which, I mean, nothing against the police officers, but like that was the biggest thing for me, because it's like, no, they're doing the same things we are, they're just getting in trouble for it more than we are. So definitely that, and the whole neighborhood thing, that was like kind of mind-blowing to me. Let's see, what other like big theme, we had like multiple themes in the class and now I'm just blanking out, but I think also the most recent one that we read about the Black women and the intersectionality. Oh, I have another good one, the microaggressions too. So the intersectionality was big to me. I did learn about it in the past, but it was good to learn about it on like a deeper level. And I'll definitely carry on that. To get the full picture of this racism, like you have to listen to the people that literally are within the crossroads of getting hit by both the racism, the sexism, so all of that. So that was also a big thing for me. And then also I really liked when we studied the microaggressions, because I had also learned that over a summer course that I took. But this one, for some reason, it just like clicked and made more sense to me. And I think one of the videos that we watched for the microaggressions, when it was talking about like even the ones you don't even think about, oh, where are you from? I would have never thought that. But I'm like, how many times have I said that in my life? Like I have totally said that before. And I have a friend, I'm in the martial arts, and I have a friend that I have been doing karate with since I was literally 8 years old. But she's like 40, but she's like one of my best friends. But she's awesome. And she is from Taiwan. And we hang out, like her and like all of our karate friends and stuff. And I reflect on that and I'm like, there have been so many times where we're like, oh, how is this in Taiwan? How do you do this in Taiwan? And like things like that. Or why did you come to America from Taiwan? And she's a very highly educated person. Like she's great. She's a like doctor of psychology. So like I think that she definitely noticed that. She just never like pointed it out to us. But now that I'm reflecting, I'm like, why did we put her under that kind of pressure and like separate her from the rest of the entire group that was white? So I think that was like a really big one for me. And then also within that video, he talked about like he reversed the role and like they started doing microaggressions on white people.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, it was funny, but I was like, oh my gosh, if that happened to us, we would have a conniption. It would be so bad. I mean, we would be the most, the most hurt people on the earth. Um, so yeah, like that was definitely big. And I think, sorry, this is a long answer.
Oh, no, keep going.
Also going along with that is there was a quote, I can't remember. No, it was from White Privilege. It said like if a person is taken away like 1% of their privilege, then it feels like so much more because they're so used to having 100%, and when they have 99%, they're like, wait a second, what? I'm getting robbed. Like, this is not fair. Whereas the minorities all around the world are getting treated with like 10%, and we're just acting like that's not a big deal. So yeah, those are the definite themes I would take away from it.
Yeah, what you were talking about with the microaggressions, I mean, that was the week I presented, so I like really nailed it on that topic. But the little things like complimenting a Black woman's hair, like things like that. I just never thought of this.
Mm-hmm.
I saw like it was mind blowing, and I'm really glad we had that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, this was a couple months back. It might have been before we talked about microaggressions or just shortly after. But my mom and I, we were watching Married at First Sight. I don't know if you've seen that show, but I love that show. But there was like a Black couple on there, and like my mom was like, "Oh my gosh, she's such a pretty Black girl." I'm like, "Stop." Like, don't. And I like confronted it, and yeah, it's my mom, like I'm totally comfortable around my mom, but even like me confronting her was like a big step for me because I wouldn't have done that in the past. I probably would have just said like, yeah, true. But yeah, I definitely noticed that, and like how it's totally embarrassing to say that, but like it gave me like confidence, and it gave me just knowing that I was more educated on the topic gave me the confidence to like speak out about it. So, and I think that that's been growing throughout the class the whole time. I think it'll continue to grow because I have like the educational basis behind it now. So,
Yeah, with this class, I learned so much vocabulary. I never knew when to say like African American or like Black person, or if that was even like okay, or um, yeah, but that's been
I don't know.
really good.
I'm still not sure on that one. I really don't.
It's like all about context, but I mean, just to know that like not all Black people are African American,
Yeah.
and that like you know
Yeah.
it's always going to be controversial, but I just have such a better view on that now.
Yeah.
Um, okay, the big question.
Okay.
What do you think it means to be an anti-racist?
So, I'm learning from myself, and I'm not there yet. Um, I think it just means, honestly, that you're you understand in every in every section of the complex word racism what it means. Like in the How to Be an Anti-Racist book, like we went over like color, race, gender, all the other ones, culture, all of those, and like understanding what it means to be anti-racist in each one of those sectors, and then like working on that and working on it and working on it. And I don't think that we can ever be perfectly anti-racist, anyone. I really don't think so, because we were conditioned, especially white people, to be. That's how we've grown up. So I think that, I think you can come really close, but I don't know if it can be perfectly done. Um, but I think just being aware, like educating yourself on each of those topics, and just learning more and more about it, just like you would learn anything else in life, and just continuing to stay up to date on like the definitions and the vocabulary that we talked about, and then like taking action to be an anti-racist, like not just letting what you think is anti-racist just shrug off your shoulder, like actually taking action against it. But I definitely think the biggest thing is educating yourself, because like I said, I didn't even want to buy the books. I thought it was just going to be another, I haven't really had a class like that, but I thought it was just going to be annoying, and I was just going to be like constantly told that I was racist. And I am, because we all are. So I think just knowing that, understanding it, accepting it, and then like learning and moving on from it.
Yeah, just understand that it's a constant pursuit to be that anti-racist. That's important, and just being open to have the conversations, like with your mom. That's a big step, and that's important to recognize that.
Yeah. Now, if I did it with my dad, I don't know what happened. I'll probably get kicked out of the house.
You'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
um, oh, this is interesting. Where do you see the Ball State, Muncie, Indiana, or even the U.S. 5 to 10 years from now? So you can start with Ball State if you want, or
Okay. Ooh, that's hard.
that's
Um, Honestly, I think it's going to take a whole lot of time to have even one college campus be directed toward anti-racism. Like, a primary goal is to be anti-racism, not to promote cultural diversity, which is great, not saying that that shouldn't happen, but to truly be anti-racist. I think that's going to take a really long time, because it's just simple that people don't understand. They're not educated. They're not able to read about and put themselves in other people's shoes. So yeah, so then 5 years from now, I honestly don't see a big change. Maybe we will have more cultural diversity, because that seems to be like a really big influence on the campus today. So maybe more of that. I know when we talked about, we had the two guest speakers from the Multicultural Center, and then the other one was, I can't remember her job title, but she was within like promoting diversity on campus. So I think that probably more of those, and especially more activities at the new Multicultural Center, would especially be growing. But as far as taking things to the next level of anti-racism, I don't see a huge change. Um, and probably even less of a change on like the city level, and even less of a change on the national level. I feel like such a Debbie Downer right now, but yeah, I just honestly, I don't. Maybe there will be some more like social acceptance and moving more towards it, but honestly, I think we'll probably just get to the climax. We'll just keep moving more towards the climax, but honestly, I don't think that a lot is going to occur, even with the new presidency.
yeah. I mean, it's okay to recognize that there might not be like visible change, but even like small things like this class, I thought it was crazy that this is the first year that Ball State has had this class, right? Or it's like really new at least, but
Yeah.
I thought that was crazy. Like, why isn't everybody learning this? Why don't we all have to take this class?
Right. Yeah, and I think that that's what I mean too by like promoting cultural diversity, because I think within the next 5 years they will add a diversity curriculum class to the core curriculum. But yeah, just like you said, like, why haven't we had a class like this, or why didn't I have a class like this in high school, or why didn't I learn about any of this in high school? I did not learn a single thing about this at all. Never had a class anything about it. So yeah, like learning about the history about it would be really beneficial, and like the true history behind it, not just like Columbus and things like that. But yeah, like I said, I'm a microbiology and pre-dental student, so I live in Cooper. I went other places my freshman year because I had to complete, the core curriculum, the PE class, stuff like that. But I'm never anywhere else. So I am like science, 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 and that's all I'm learning about. And so if I didn't have this class, I would have no class at all, culturally based at all. And I mean, I guess we have sociology for pre-dental. I'm actually like pre-dental pre-med, but we do have sociology, but still that doesn't like get into the meat of it.
Yeah, I really hope that as our generation kind of grows up and learns, then maybe, like, even if we can't, then maybe our kids will be even more just knowledgeable
Yeah.
on the topic as they grow up. So we're getting close to our time. So we can wrap up here pretty soon, but where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And the information that you've taken from this class, like, how do you think it'll affect your future?
Okay, yeah. So I definitely think that I've learned a lot from this class, and I think it's made me more active in being an anti-racist. And I think that that starts with me, begins with me, just taking the little steps against or being an anti-racist, like saying those little comments like, come on, mom, like that wasn't the right thing to say. For me, that's where it starts because I am a beginner at this. So yeah, I think that it's going to take like little steps like that. And then like, I think that I'll continue to grow more and more while I'll get to the point where I might go to a protest that would be happening on Ball State campus by myself. So that would be like a big step for me. So, you know, like just building that and like as I continue my education, especially in the healthcare field, I believe that I will see a lot more inequity of minorities in the healthcare field. I haven't learned a lot about that yet, but I've kind of caught some glimpses of it. So I think that that will also encourage me to continue on my anti-racist journey as far as the healthcare field goes, because, you know, I want to be a doctor or a PA one day. So hopefully with my leadership position, I will be able to help others as well. So.
Yeah, that must be really interesting for you with COVID-19 and like seeing the racism in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have anything else you'd like to say before we conclude?
Um, I don't believe so. I think that we hit a lot on a lot of good topics.
Definitely.
I think that one of the most important things to note is that a lot of people are probably intimidated to take a class like this. I can admit I was. If I would have probably seen what the class was about and what I would have to read, I would probably, I'll just take another honors 199. And that's totally vulnerable of me to say and embarrassing, but I'm honestly really glad that I took the class. And it was uncomfortable at first having the discussion because it's like I kind of felt like an outsider in the class because, you know, there's so many people in our class that are just brilliant and they know so much about everything. And I'm like, oh, you're awesome. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say because I feel so stupid because I'm not educated. So that was definitely me. But even though I still don't talk like a whole lot in class, I'm definitely absorbing it on a higher level. And I've definitely come out of my comfort zone when talking about it in class and out of class. So I think it's super important for people to take a class like this and not to be intimidated and just see it as a learning curve and getting out of your comfort zone, which is, I think, all around is the most important thing you can do in life. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for your time.
yeah. Yeah.
I don't really have anything else to say to wrap it up, but
Well, thank you. It was good talking to you, interviewing. So I'm glad that I took the class and was able to document this.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I hope you have a nice night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.